when we move fast, we break things. And and those who will participate in that journey will probably see the competitive advantage. And those who are going to wait on the sidelines and wait for everything to mature fully before they adopt to this so-called changing landscape, I think will be left behind.
Ritesh, how are you? So nice to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Nick. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent, great. So Ritesh, obviously you work for Zscaler, but we're going to be talking more generally, in this podcast and really around kind of zero trust and AI. So, I think really hot topic in the industry, and it's only going to get hotter. So, I think before we kind of dive into a lot of the discussion, part of our podcasts are to introduce people to the community. And so, probably the best way to do that is if you can spend a little bit of time talking about your career journey, where you were before, kind of what you do now at Zscaler, and then we can kind of jump into topics. So a little bit about your career journey, please.
Oh, absolutely. I'm currently managing Zscaler's Zero Trust Branch Initiative. This is anything that is not data center or cloud is generally considered as a branch at Zscaler. There's a lot of innovation that we're bringing to the branch side of the house, and I'm very excited about the prospects and the future of Zero Trust Branch from Zscaler. I came into Zscaler through an acquisition of a company called AirGap Networks. I was the CEO and the founder of AirGap Networks,
Yeah.
which was pioneering the security for the branches and hence match made in heaven, so to speak. AirGap was acquired last year by Zscaler in April 2024, and we were in business for about 5 years prior to that acquisition.
Hmm.
And we built some credible customer base, large factories, hospitals. Those were the kind of branches or campuses that we were catering to with 5 9 plus reliability, and that's where we are. Prior to that, I used to be at Juniper running their security business, focusing on data centers and service providers, especially telcos. And majority of my career was spent at Juniper,
Yeah.
learning all the chops on networking and security. I did my master's at Arizona State, worked for Motorola for a while before joining Juniper.
Yeah. Very good. Oh, let's see. Over at Motorola, what years were you over at Motorola?
98, 99, and a little bit of 2000.
Okay. Oh my God, I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. I think they started Sycamore Networks.
Oh, okay. Deshpande.
Yes, Dash, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. Did you ever get to work with Dash over at Motorola?
No, I was in their PowerPC Somerset Design Center. We were building chips for what was Apple back then using Motorola chipsets, and then
Uh,
eventually Apple switched to Intel, as we all know. But it
yeah.
was a lot of fun. The Macs, if you remember, the cute little Macs with the CRT, but everything built into it, those were built with PowerPC
Yeah.
chipsets, which is what I was working on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've had a few of those. Actually, I think I probably still have one or two of them around,
A very
around the place.
Probably the most beautiful computer of our generation, I would say. I mean, these laptops and all are cute, but that was just the colorful ones, which pretty bright fluorescent
Yeah.
colors, kind of thing, orange, green, blue. I've seen some of those. They were pretty cute.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when Apple was, not that Apple isn't innovating anymore, but it was more playful, I think in its innovations.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad that you know Dash. Like I've known Dash for a super long time. I haven't talked to him in a while. A bunch of years, but like in the early days, this had to be in 1991, 92 timeframe. Um, he was just leaving Motorola, starting a company, and we were and it was really all about kind of frame relay. So it was kind of like all in the wide area, space. I think that was before Sycamore.
Such a
Um,
small
but
world.
but anyways,
My brother worked for him at
yeah, he's.
Sycamore. A small world.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Oh my, yeah, it's
The
great.
funny story, me and my brother both got a job at both
Yeah.
Sycamore and Juniper.
Uh
And
huh.
coin tossed, he likes cold and I don't like colds. That was the decision making, that I should go to Juniper because I don't like cold, and he's like, I'm okay with cold, so I'll go to Sycamore. Literally, that was the case. It's so
You
funny.
know, that does not surprise me, at all. Sometimes like the big decisions come down to like creature comfort, and that was
Even young
and that
wouldn't know
was
much.
clearly yours.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well that's great. What a wonderful pedigree, in your background. So thanks so much for sharing that. So you've been around the industry for a long time, both in kind of networking and security. So this is really, I think, going to be a great chat. So so let's talk a little bit about kind of zero trust and kind of an AI driven security and the evolution there. And so Zscaler has, spent, kind of a good decade, promoting and building product to implement um, zero trust. As we're getting into the agentic space, we've actually within ONIG, we have something called the collaborative, and we have a working group called the agentic AI overlay reference architecture. And maybe I'll kind of share that in a second, like what that image looks like. But in order for like agents to be able to communicate with each other, and also to interrogate tools and applications, gain data and so forth, all of these agents need to have identity. They need to be part of a zero. The infrastructure needs to be a part of zero trust, and the agents need to be, authenticated. Continually authenticated, interrogated, to make sure that they don't go rogue. But in order for this to really scale, like corporations having thousands of agents, plus doing work on behalf of a wide range of both machines and people, I think the underlying infrastructure, there's got to be zero trust. So anyway, how are you viewing that? And maybe I'm not sure if it kind of maps into the branch discussion that or air gap in the work that you did there before that you brought that into Zscaler. But if it does, feel free to connect those dots.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all excited about AI, rightfully so. I think it's the most profound change, and I consider myself lucky to have witnessed the life before AI and hopefully life after AI as well. And this is going to be a lucky break for all of us. AI has making a profound change for the industry, and we think, especially, and I focus on AI in terms of two aspects. One is security for AI and AI in security, or how AI can
Yeah.
augment our security tools and postures. And so we have to keep that sort of both of those contexts in mind as we think about AI for the enterprise, especially for security organizations like Zscaler. Um, at AirGap, we leveraged AI. The first easy thing to do, and this is I'm dating myself 2 years ago, and in 2 years in AI speak is like a generation, I think, these days. Um, 2 3 years ago, we everybody was building Copilot, and so did we, and that made a huge difference in terms of how people were able to access data that we had for their own resources. So, for example, if customers wanted to know how many Windows 2000 devices we have in our network that are leveraging RDP protocols. And if you need to have that data before AI or before air gap in that sense, it could take weeks, months, and you still won't get 100% accurate data. But with our
Mm.
system in place, with us having access to that information for customers and being able to create that tenancy for customer and provide that customer specific data back to customer, that was a profound change. They could easily say, okay, 70% of my workload is potentially vulnerable because of RDP protocol, or 30% of my workload. And these are those workloads. And we would allow them to write policies almost autonomously so that they could restrict RDP access to these mission critical functions. So that was the air gap journey with AI. And before we could implement, we had huge ambition to do a lot of things, but we got acquired before we could realize all of that. But we continued that journey within the company here at Zscaler as well, and it's getting more and more profound
Yeah.
as we go forward. Now AI is all about, how do we recommend policies to our customers? Because in security speak, often enough, it's very difficult to understand what policies you want to put, especially if you're doing network security at a granular level. Um,
Yeah.
so that's something that we definitely focus on. But overall, I think in terms of AI for security, there's so many avenues and opportunities that are now being used inside Zscaler, especially pertaining to providing customer the guidance in how to better secure their environment. I think your
Hmm.
question is a lot more sort of centric towards securing the AI workload itself. And boy, that's a topic that is evolving pretty much every day. Agents. I know Replit just announced that their agents can now create agents autonomously as well.
Yeah.
We're not talking about users just writing agents. We're talking about agents writing agents. Life was simpler when we could have
Yeah.
user identity, workload identity, and potentially device identity like IoT devices, etc. But
Yeah.
agents that are being spun up autonomously, creating an identity is quite a bit an interesting topic to discuss. And there are certain things that we have to do. This is all creating sort of dynamic environment for your enterprises that have agents popping up here and there at the edge locations and trying to access mission critical workload. And it's really important for us to make sure that we have real time context of what is happening, proper isolation and segmentation of
Yeah.
your assets or data, because these agents thrive on data. Without data, the agents practically useless. And so, are these agents having access to appropriate data based on who spun it up, what the authentication and authorization for that particular endpoint or user is that is sort of responsible for the agent, and tie the identity of the agent to appropriate data access? Those are some of the things that we're doing. And then AI to AI interaction, that needs to be zero trust as well. I mean, okay, fine,
Yeah.
I'm controlling data access, but now this data goes to an AI agent which can interact with other AI agents that could further interact with other data sources. And now you have to be really implementing the entire ecosystem with zero trust in mind, with workload isolation in mind, so that data doesn't leak from or through agents basically. And then can use AI to automate AI, so to speak, AI security. So leverage AI for automation, so
Yeah.
that as agents are spun up, you're automating the policies, security policies, or access control policies for those agents. This is going to be an ongoing topic. I think there is a lot of focus and rigor required to get AI in the same domain where we've gotten users in terms of security.
Yeah. Let me, Ritesh, let me kind of share something with you. And this is a reference architecture that was developed within the collaborative. And let's see if I can grab that. Yes. Okay. Can you see that?
Yep, I can.
Let me see if I could put this into. Yeah. Okay. Let me kind of just walk through this and give you an idea. So, one, this is the legend here. So, in here we have AI models, which are really mostly going to be focused around inference. There are various tools, the agents themselves, and databases. And then the yellow lines are agents accessing non-agents. So, like they're accessing AI models or accessing tools and databases. This is a private infrastructure and a private infrastructure. So it could be, um, GE, and they have two databases or two data centers as an example. So in there, they have their own inference, they have their own data, they have their own tools. And then the agents communicate to those devices. And then the blue is the agents talking to each other. So that's all within a sovereign domain of a private infrastructure. Then there are public domain internet services as well, and there's plenty like within banking and so forth. And this is actually this graph. The the editor messed up on this one, so I'm going to have to change that. That should be more like banking and e-commerce, just to give you an example of that. So they'll have their own set of agents, tools, and here more than likely individual account, data for the user. Then more public domain AI services. So this is like Claude, ChatGPT, and obviously this will proliferate and explode with the number of agents, within it. But anyway, so those agents also have their own interactions. And then these agents are able to communicate to other agents outside of their particular domains. And then on the an agent may want to have access to tools or to data or reference or inference in other domains. And this is cloud hosted services. So the same thing. So like you can understand how kind of a multi-cloud or really multi-agent, multi-identity, kind of architecture is going to take place. And then to control all this, well, this, I'm sorry, before that, all of this will happen over a public network. And that's really got to be a zero trust infrastructure. I think that's almost table stakes for this to happen in this world, and then to be able to control this. So you were mentioning that before. It's like having maybe rogue agents and being able to isolate them and identify the policy or create policy, and then put the governance, wrap around what agents can and can't do, what kind of data they have access to or they don't have access to. Are they able to share that data, or is that data just for their ingestion and for their process? Where do they find other agents that might be able to do a process that they can't do? So a directory. So all of that, is kind of in an area that we're calling agentic overlay monitoring and control. So I think this is just an example of a reference architecture that has really been done by the largest consumers within the ONU community that are really starting to think through how does an agentic world actually operate. And what their view is that this is an overlay to existing underlay infrastructure. But there is a lot of new protocols that are getting developed for this. There's a lot of new security vulnerabilities that are being exposed or being opened up. And so I think what we're trying to do with this is to, one, share this architecture, and then hear how companies can participate, suppliers like Zscalers and others, to one, digest this, and then also to provide solutions around it. So
Yeah, this is quite profound and very much aligned with what I think is going to be the future, if not already there. In terms of, look, we're going to see the internet of agents, so to speak. There'll be more agent to agent conversation or agent to model conversation than human to
yeah,
application conversation, I think, and that we should be able to tip over that pretty soon. Um, what this looks like is a decentralized hybrid connectivity, essentially. So, see, there was this notion of centralized hybrid connectivity in the past, and
yeah,
then this is really decentralized. Any agent can talk to any resource available anywhere in the world, including enterprise private cloud or public cloud or otherwise.
yeah.
This is awfully similar to the world before Zscaler, when we used to connect MPLS and VPN, and we would have site-to-site connectivity and site-to-data center connectivity and data center-to-data center connectivity over VPNs and IPsec and other MPLS circuits, and that created all kinds of security challenges for enterprises. And the way
Mm,
Zscaler, which really pioneered this notion of zero trust, came across is we will build a very large, very distributed, and a scalable, centralized Zscaler exchange, and you can connect everything to us. And we would ensure that there is authenticated, authorized connectivity to the destination of choice
mm,
for that user in our case. And the same notion is now and should be extrapolated to say, look, as long as everything is going through a secure trusted entity that is ensuring authentication and authorization, I would allow that agent to agent or agent to model communication.
yeah.
Does that make sense as number
It
one?
does, yeah. Like so, like you're talking about the whole, the monitoring and control aspect,
Correct.
here. So, and that is centralized. So you're right. There's a decentralized and distributed communications, but there's decentralized agent, to agent communication. So multi-agent, but there also it's centralized control.
That's
So
right.
that you need centralized control of this, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you set policy. That's where you get authorization. That's where you check to make sure that you can trust that agent. That's how you kind of check to make sure the agent isn't all of a sudden doing something that it shouldn't be doing. Yeah, that's got to be centralized. Is
That's
in
right.
my mind. And then also too, there's all these different sovereign domains, like in this graphic, right? So we have private infrastructure, we have public infrastructure, we have kind of the cloud, services. All of those also are different. So
Exactly.
this right, so this centralized, monitor control is also a way to do adaptation or translation, so those agents can actually you can communicate with those agents and assure that the policies and the governance that you're putting in place is to your to your specifications, and that even though you're using an agent that might be in Google or what have you, and it might be talking a different kind of monitoring control language, it's being translated back into a language that you understand and that you can control.
Right. So control plane has to be centralized. Data plane can be distributed so that you have low latency agent to agent communication for better user experience. But overall, the control plane, which is authorization and authentication predominantly, should be centralized. It also is important for us to secure the edge now because
Yeah,
those boxes that you're showing, whether it's data center or cloud or or enterprise campuses, those will accept connection from other agents, rightfully so, because that's required for the business.
yeah,
But we need to make sure there's no rogue agent connecting into those so-called perimeters or edges, and we need to ensure that we are securing those through modern security notion, not necessarily the old school firewall VPN notion, because they can be easily breached with zero-day
yeah,
vulnerabilities. And frankly, they're lacking the idea of agent-to-agent communication, and there's going to be
right.
a long time before they progress to that level. And then we need to do microsegmentation within a particular domain, if I may, right? Because you
Hmm.
may allow a certain agent to access finance application and another certain agent to access human resource applications and so on and so forth. And we can't crisscross the wires because that could be catastrophic. And
Oh,
so microsegmentation at the granular level is really, really going to become a key part of this process of securing AI to AI communication. Because essentially, this is similar to user to application access, but on a turbocharge. Because you're now
yeah,
going to see 10 times or 50 times of human capacity being exploited on a daily basis. So the manual process control won't work. And that means you
yeah,
need to set the structure correctly so that it's handled at scale, at the required scale. And then visibility, this is really, really important. Who's accessing what? I need to be able to post access. I should be able to create an inventory and audit sort of framework that says,
yeah,
okay, I know, and then be able to leverage that audit framework to understand if there is any data leak happening here.
yeah.
Because policy configuration could be done incorrectly. Somebody could make a mistake. There could be a bug in the system. There is all kinds of possibilities that exist, and it's really, really important for us. And I cannot stress enough. And I come from networking background, so I'm biased. You have to bear with me.
It's
But
okay. So do I. So does most of the Bill for Trust are like they networking backgrounds. So
right,
you're amongst friends.
the convergence of this network and security in this particular context is really, really important to understand.
Yeah,
Because ultimately we are passing bits and bytes, so-called underlay network, we're passing bits and bytes over the network, and we need to ensure that that communication is super secure, quantum proof potentially, because this is for the long haul. We need to be really ready for that. So that those are some of the things that we have to keep an eye on at a high level, to make sure that we are ready for the agentic AI world, if I may call that.
you said there's a lot of things that you just went through there, Rakesh. Like a couple of things I want to maybe point out. First of all, is that firewalls don't work in this world. They're it's like they just don't work. And also, like to me, it's like if you do a really good job on identity as a core component of zero trust, then why do you need to microsegment? You know, so like that, the identity and the zero trust should, in theory, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's in theory, should be able to isolate where a particular what kind of data is shared, what agents can talk to which agents can talk to which applications, which agents have access to which particular tools. So I'm not sure, why do you need microsegmentation in that world? Shouldn't zero trust really provide the isolation that we need?
I think microsegmentation is sort of the notion of zero trust itself, but let's double click on this a little bit. Um,
Hmm.
we've seen this, and I'll draw a parallel with IoT, OT kind of environment. You could have a resource that is compromised in supply chain itself. Let's say you instantiated that VM that has that particular application that participates in agent to agent conversation, but that VM itself is compromised through means we don't even know or control.
Hmm.
And if that is the case, then that can act as a source or a target to move east west within your enterprise and start to create holes that agents could then potentially further exploit. It's generally a good hygiene to
Hmm.
say, for example, finance department is completely separate from human resources, is completely separate from engineering department. So I don't even have, either through misconfiguration or potential breach or potential compromise in supply chain, any situation that creates that compromise for me. And I can kind of rest peacefully knowing that no matter what, finance data is 100% isolated from HR data and vice versa.
I can see that. I can see if like departmental, or PII, data that needs to be totally separated from everything else, and so that's like totally. But I wouldn't call that a microsegmentation. I would call that's just segmented. That's like it's totally over there, and you don't have access to it, or these devices don't have access to it. So I totally get that. So maybe there's like a need to start to rethink their segmentation on a large scale, on the shorter end of that, like hyper micro, like nano segmentation. Like, I don't know. It's like I think that's going to be really hard to do. But we'll leave that to the vendor community to provide solutions around that. I would think that's mostly going to come from the control plane. That's what I would think,
Yeah,
right?
look, I think the whole idea of segmentation, micro and nano segmentation never took off, unfortunately. So, because policy control, writing policies for nano segmentation is a policy explosion problem, not necessarily tool
Yeah.
or a technology problem. If there was a magic wand, everybody would like to make it nano segmentation, but that's just not achievable, I think, in practical speak. But microsegmentation, the notion is depending on how flat your network is. If your network is already core grain segmented, which is you have finance separated from HR in our
Yeah.
example, you are probably already there. But I've seen scenarios and customers, and depending on the environment, right, they have much flatter
Mhm.
design where everything has access to everything. Obviously makes it easy to implement such networks, but then it creates security nightmare. And that's where you have no choice but to start doing segmentation or micro segmentation. I've also had customers who have 1,000 plus applications, private applications, so to speak,
Mhm.
and they are relatively in the same data center, not as well segmented as one would expect or imagine. And now these applications which are carrying sensitive information, earlier it was like, okay, only select people have access to it. The moment you
Yeah.
open it up to agents and agents can do whatever they want to do, you start to worry. And
Yeah.
so I think the reality is going to be somewhere between coarse segmentation and full micro segmentation. I think we have to straddle in between the two depending on the sensitivity of the information or the data.
Yeah. But it's a really interesting design discussion, because we've been many companies, have been forced to do microsegmentation, and it's difficult to manage, right? And so as we move into this world, you would think that there's a role for AI there, to kind of manage that segmentation, process. But I want to switch our topic a little bit. So we've been kind of talking about kind of AI's impact, on infrastructure and on what we now have to do on security. We haven't really talked that much about AI workloads, but it was really kind of more abstracted around agents. You also mentioned like AI for security. So I want to maybe share one thing with you on this as well. So let me do this as a kind of a setup, and then we can kind of chat. Um, Here it is. So we've been thinking a lot about. Let me back that up. In essence, been thinking about. We know that there's like massive amounts of investment that's happening in AI. We know the spending is also increasing, exponentially. We also know that data um, is growing literally exponentially. The traffic patterns are all, becoming undeterministic and complex and different, that the architectures, weren't really built, or the protocols really weren't built for them. Like clearly TCP/IP doesn't work within GPU clusters anymore, and as we move AI into the edge, what kind of changes in traffic we're going to see there. And then the question is, so we know that there's this big thing that's coming at us, it's coming at us fast and it's coming at us really big. And everyone uses the term tsunami. All right. There's, so the question has been like, how fast is this coming? And if we think about it from an operations point of view, so the area that that I've been focused on has been around model autonomy. All right. And so there's this really interesting, graphic, and there's a company called Meter, and they're a nonprofit that measures various different models, and they plotted out various different tasks across wide range of activities. And okay, well, how fast can the models, do them from in terms of human time? So if we look at like these X's here, these X's on this graph. So anyway, this graph is time marked in years, 2-year clicks, and then on the y-axis it's exponential. All right. So if we look at where we are around 2025 time frame, what's observed now is that most of the models might be able to kind of deliver a task that might take a human about an hour, hour and a half, right? In general, and that makes sense, right? So like you basically put a prompt in, I want a full business plan on X, and search the web, and and provide all these references and so forth, and then boom, you get it, pretty quick. That might have taken longer than an hour and a half, but like on average. So it's about an hour and a half of time. If we look at how this, how Meter has been like measuring this, is that by 2028, it'll be able to kind of do that kind of work in the amount of time that it would take a human to do it in a week. And then we move into 2030, it's about a month worth of time. And then we superimpose that on terms of operations. So this is going back to AI to operations, right? So right now in our stage, humans are mostly in the loop. We have AI agents that we're starting to use. We're starting to use AI to do sometimes a matter of analysis for like signatures and incident response, or threat signatures and so forth. So really assistant. But then once we go into like the 2028 timeframe, which is only a few years away, we're now like in about a week's worth of time. So it's like humans then are not really kind of in the bulk, though carrying the main load here, but they're starting to be more supervisory levels, and where the AIs can actually look more pervasively across the infrastructure to identify anomalies and to start to mitigate them and deal with incident responses in really quick time frames, like in the microsecond and nanosecond time frame. But then in the 2030 timeframe, we're moving into like a more mature autonomy and getting away from the old model of kind of a haystack operation center where we have all this telemetry, logs, alerts, alarms that are sent to a centralized data store or a data lake. And then we have to, an incident happens, and then we have engineers that are just like looking for a needle in that haystack. That model goes away in essence in here, where now we have agentic AI operations, and where humans still having very deep domain experience, but we really start to focus more on policy and governance and get involved in exceptions. So this is going from like about an hour and a half worth of human time to do tasks to a week to a month. Now that's one thing. There's another graph that's really become kind of popular in the kind of within the Twitter within X that I've been focusing on. There's a guy named Dave Shapiro, and he's basically saying no, it's not exponential, which is the meter graph, the red graph. It's really super exponential, and and you see evidence for this, right? So you see a curve for a semi-log graph that shows how fast these models are going to assimilate autonomy. And if you look at this, like by 2030, these agents could do the work that would take someone 20,000 years.
Yeah,
It's kind of is the number. It's like it's off the chart. It's beyond the horizon of our comprehension.
that's right.
So so I don't know where we are. Either we're going to be in an exponential curve around autonomy, or we're going to be super exponential. And it's a guess, a wild ass guess, but maybe it's somewhere in between the two. So sorry for that really long explanation and
No, this is
setup.
very
Um,
interesting.
but I
Very
think
interesting.
this is, yeah, I'm sorry. I stepped on you. Say that again.
It's very interesting, I said.
Yeah, so I think this is really where the industry is headed, to, and we've got to be prepared because I was mentioning these tsunamis of both data traffic and of just AI, growth and capacity happening. This is showing how far away or how close those waves are to hitting, and they're really, really close for people to get prepared. So now, all right, let's talk about kind of AI in for security.
Yeah, look, the current security models obviously won't work because they're too slow. They're working at human speed, or maybe slightly better. When we are talking
Yeah,
about 20,000 years worth of work in potentially minutes or seconds, and the good news is we have to leverage AI to combat AI, so to speak. And there are a few areas where we need to really focus on, and that's where the new opportunities come up for vendors like Zscaler and potentially new upcoming startups. And I know a few that are really dabbling in this area as well. The first thing first is we need to be able to predict and prevent threats. There is no more sort of let me do a post processing to identify. It's too late. It may take you minutes
yeah,
or hours. By the time the data entire data lake must have been gone or exploited already, so need to be
yeah,
able to do that. The SOC function needs to first and foremost, I think, needs to be disrupted big time. This SOC function has to be completely autonomous. The human element, now
yeah,
once in a while we may need human element, hopefully lesser and lesser as AI becomes even more powerful, and we get to AGI and whatnot. But the manual SOC operation is thing of a past, especially within the next couple of years, like you were saying, 2028 or 2030. All of the investment that has gone into traditional SOC model will be completely decimated, in my humble opinion.
yeah,
We need to be able to adapt in real time to evolving landscape of AI. We cannot say, okay, product is done and we can move on, let's just keep selling it. We need to keep playing the catch up game with AI, essentially leveraging AI to protect AI, so to speak. And
yeah,
that is definitely something that we need to handle. I think a combination of zero trust technology, generative AI, leveraging generative AI in conjunction with sort of zero trust architecture and automation for SOC are the three areas that I would particularly focus on, while keeping it very dynamic. I know that every month, every year, something profound is going to change with AI, and we need to keep track of it and we need to keep up with it from security perspective.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you on all those three domains, and I think that the place that will be interesting is as we start to see, and maybe this is part of the whole edge, discussion, but the way that we've built infrastructure and what we're doing today, right? So it's like we have all of these devices, whether they're software modules or they're actually hardware devices, routers, switches, load balancers, firewalls, so forth and so on, right? and then they would emit, logs and alerts, alarms, and so forth. And we centralize those. The haystack model that we talked about, a second ago. I think the model, and who knows if this is right, but will be more distributed, meaning that we put agents into the infrastructure so that the agents can actually communicate amongst agents that are in different parts of the infrastructure. So as they start to see maybe some incident occurring, it's not send it up to some centralized place for it to be analyzed, but it's more about maybe there's some centralization, of something is happening in the infrastructure, what's happening. And so like then it energizes a group of agents to start actually looking at kind of a blast radius and starting to like do some analysis and try to figure out what's happening and then mitigate it. So I think it's more moving away from kind of a haystack model into more of a highly distributed agent, model within the infrastructure, and then within the operations, center kind of oversight, and we still need centralized governance and centralized policy and all those kind of monitoring and control, the control plane that we were, alluding to before. But that's what it seems like to me, and that's what some of the models seem to be kind of suggesting that in order to really deal with um, the level of dynamicism at very high speeds in machine speed, centralization isn't going to work. It's going to have to be really distributed. So I'm not sure how you feel about that.
Yeah, so there are two aspects to it. One is establishing the connection through overlay, underlay, whatever that needs to be centralized so that we can have access to the flow of information. And then we need to monitor that flow of information in real time through using AI or agents that are distributed across the board, because we cannot rely on data plane being centralized, and that won't
Right.
work. And
Yeah.
so I think this is one of those things where passport authority is centralized, but then passport is checked at every port of entry. And we need to
Yeah.
do the same thing. We need to monitor, and definitely and most assuredly, the policy constructs have to be automated. The threat detection and prevention has to be automated, and prediction has to be part of the equation. Otherwise, we, the speed at which AI is growing and the speed at which the data is going to be exchanged requires us to automate everything. No human element can actually pass the muster test and prevent threats and breaches in time, for your organization to be safe. So AI would need AI, in my opinion,
Yeah.
in terms of security
Yeah.
controls. And this whole domain is going to see a massive shift in the way people think about security of their infrastructure. And I witness a lot of organizations that are as eager to get into AI, but at the same time as hesitant to get into AI because of these concerns that you rightfully observed.
Mm.
The anticipation and expectation is that the security vendors would catch up eventually and provide our enterprise customers the freedom to leverage AI and all the benefits AI has to offer. And it's a huge responsibility on our end to make sure that we provide the confidence and assurance to our customers to use AI and have the freedom to leverage AI to, be competitive in the market.
Yeah. No, yeah. I totally agree with that. Ritesh, it's like, there is a part of me that says, wow, is the autonomy model, if those are correct, and who knows if they're correct, but if they're correct, um, boy, that just changes so much everything. Can everyone move that fast? Or is it, or are we in a kind of a transformation in the industry where it's like, it's those who are able to move that fast and really harness the technologies are going to be the ones that are really going to win, and there'll be a lot that won't, be left by the wayside, here. So,
And those who
it's
are
in,
bold enough to understand that when we move fast, we break things.
yeah.
And those who will participate in that journey will probably see the competitive advantage. And those who are going to wait on the sidelines and wait for everything to mature fully before they adopt, to this so-called changing landscape, I think we'll be left behind. And maybe it's not a bad thing. Slow movers have to be left behind, law of nature, and the fast movers will go forward. But a lot of enterprises
Yeah.
I'm seeing are grappling with this and struggling with this notion, especially the old school ones.
Yeah, that is for sure. And I think we had John Chambers come and speak at the last summit in Dallas, and John had he had one. He always has a lot of interesting things to say. But one quote in particular, where he's basically said that by 2030, 70% of the Fortune 500
Yes.
companies won't be on that list. And I heard that, and I think, okay, well that's kind of interesting. It wasn't until I really started diving into the model autonomy that I'm like, wow. Because like obviously we looked at that from an operations point of view around infrastructure, but those are general models, right? So that talks about operations in general. So like, all right, the workflow that happens in finance and in engineering and in manufacturing, it's like, in human resources, like all of that is going to get totally disrupted. Um, but you
And
still need really deep domain experience. I don't want to basically say, machines are going to be running everything. It's that like any AI is useless without anyone who understands what the outcome is that you're looking for. Right. So you need deep domain experience. That's not the issue. But the issue is that, there's a massive amount of capacity that's about to be injected into every corporation. And I thought, like, Walmart was really good. What has it done? McMillan, I think, is that the CEO over at Walmart, right? And so, like, Walmart last week, there are 2.3 million employees, around the globe, the largest private employer on the planet. They're basically going to keep, their employee pool constant while they grow the company 4% a year. So that kind of tells you what kind of return on investment in AI they're looking for. They're looking for 4% productivity return on the scale of a Walmart, per year. It's
yeah,
massive. You know.
which is some of these old, oh, I don't want to call them old, but some of these traditional companies are going to see the model disrupted, and they're public companies, so they have the responsibility to show quarter over quarter growth and numbers and so on and so forth, which doesn't give them enough time to kind of put the brakes and rethink their model. And so those are the ones that will be
Yeah.
disrupted the most. Those who are going to be able to take the time and at least start something in parallel in a big way, as in disrupt themselves, those are the ones that will survive eventually. But
Yeah.
every facet, I mean, this is not even about security or cybersecurity, but everything we do and how we consume information and resources and data is subject to change dramatically. And that is what I think John probably was alluding to. And I remember listening to that talk as well, that every enterprise on the planet is subject to disruption
Yeah.
with AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
Real question is who's going to disrupt it, themselves or somebody else, but it's going to get disrupted one way or another.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch one topic, and I hope it's not a long one. But it's really around kind of in the age of AI, it's really all around, and we've been alluding to this all throughout our entire discussion. But it's policy, it's governance, it's gaining trust. So it's like data, identity, and trust. So zero trust has been around for over a decade, and it was difficult for many companies to deploy it, but it's starting to get easier. And I think in our discussions, it's almost like table stakes now. You need to put a zero trust infrastructure in place if you're going to allow these agents to be able to talk to each other. It's obviously there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, a lot of technology that still needs to be developed, but that is a foundational technology. So maybe how should designers and planners start to think about laying that foundation in as AI is going to be coming on strong within their organizations.
Yeah, look, AI agents are definitely reshaping the trust models we've had. Traditionally, all the models revolved around human-centric approach. We can sort of establish trust through user identity or access control policies, etc. Make sure that the data is encrypted between the user and the in application, so to speak. And when the AI agents start operating autonomously and start making network connectivity decisions and security decisions, we need to start thinking trust from a fundamental point of view, right? And we all know that AI agents rely on data to make any decision. And so the trust in data becomes really, really important.
Yeah,
So this is really important for enterprises to ensure that data that is fed to the AI agents or AI system is clean, reliable, and free from sort of tempering. So if somebody, we are making we're going to make very, very important decisions based on data coming out of AI. If the input data to the AI itself is compromised somehow,
yeah,
then it's a problem. So we need to definitely adopt systems that continuously inspect all the data that we are feeding to the AI agents, and that are not being exploited in transit, so to speak. Identity and trust is really, really important. So we need to then apply zero trust principles, um, that traditionally the principles have revolved around authenticating person or devices, but with autonomous AI agents, we need to develop identity framework for AI in entities. It could be digital certificates, it could be behavioral based AI profiling. So I know this agent continuously communicates with HR system, and suddenly it's now jumping in and accessing engineering data. It may be a behavioral way of sort of this is essentially extrapolating what we did for users from behavior perspective, and now we have to extrapolate that to agents as well.
yeah,
We also need to focus on policy automation, just so that we know that these are the agents and these are the policies, and based on the observed behaviors, we need to continuously analyze the risk and then modify the policy. So if this agent is very risky, maybe I don't want to give access to financial systems anymore. And these
yeah.
decisions have to be dynamic. It cannot be sort of statically defined. And overall,
That's
I
a good
think,
point. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Overall, I
that
think,
that whole feedback loop, around policy, observability, behavior, and then the guardrails,
yeah.
and kind of where are you going out off the guardrails. That's super important.
And like we discussed before, the observability of data and auditability of that connection that has happened, and post analysis, and when I say post, almost simultaneous analysis of the data should give us clear indication that something is right or wrong about the system. And
Yeah,
much like we are going to trust AI to potentially operate us someday, we need to trust AI to write security policies. This has been a holy grail. People used to, I have had many conversations with customers. They would say, man, your AI may create policy that would stop a particular function, and that could be catastrophic.
yeah.
Well, very soon we're going to have AI, do surgical operations on us. We're going to have to trust AI. And this is going to our earlier topic. Those who are going to embrace AI and understand that this is the way to go will probably survive, and the rest may not.
It's I frankly I think the trust piece, clearly it will come. Uh, like for example, I've been driving a Tesla for like 12 years. I've been using FSD ever since it came out, and now it's only with version 13 that my wife is comfortable with it. She's like, oh my god, this is like, actually I feel like there's a chauffeur driving. It's like I picked my daughter up at 2 in the morning last night, or I guess this morning, at the airport. And so, but it's like the car is driving us home. It gained that trust after using it, in because you see how it behaves, you observe its behavior, in a wide range of different scenarios. And then once you understand that, so in here, like the policy is in your head. It's like, okay, and the governance is kind of in your head. It's like, and that's all about kind of personal safety, and comfort, while you're experiencing that drive. So I don't think this is going to be a big leap. I think there are people who are going to be afraid of this, and but I think there are enough models that are showing that it's only a matter of time that it'll gain our trust. And if it violates the trust, then all bets are off. It's like you pull the plug.
I agree. I've started to learn to trust Tesla more. I think it's a better driver than I am now. It's gone to that stage where I start to believe that 99% of the time it's better than me.
I know that for sure. Especially at 2 in the morning. I know it. You know. Oh, well,
Agree.
Ritesh, this was like really a lot of fun. I had a great time, chatting with you. I think that's probably a really good place for us to end it with some advice, to the community about kind of what's coming. I really haven't thought that much about kind of AI written policy. That's actually a really interesting piece, and that whole feedback loop around policy, observability, governance, policy. That's I think that's some good advice to leave with everyone. So
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been fun, and I look forward to doing this again someday.
Awesome. Great. Ritesh, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for plugging in as well. I hope you enjoyed it, half as much as I enjoyed talking with Ritesh. It was really great. Thank you.
Thank you.